Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe and share this with your friends so they don't miss out on any of our upcoming stories and teachings. Follow us on YouTube and Roku for more powerful, life changing content. There are houses that stand because someone built them, and there are houses that stand because heaven held them up. The Rivera home was somewhere in between. From the outside, it looked peaceful: a white porch, a trimmed lawn, a wind chime that sang whenever the breeze passed by. But inside, the air was tight. Conversations were short, smiles were thin, and love, though present, was tired. Above the house, unseen by human eyes, an angel named Shemar stood watch. His wings were folded close, his expression solemn. He had been assigned to this family long before they knew they needed him. He had watched their arguments, their silence, their attempts to fix things with emotion alone, and he knew the truth. Love is the flame, but wisdom is the house that keeps it burning. Tonight, heaven had decided to intervene. Inside the home, David sat at the kitchen table, shoulders heavy, staring at a stack of bills he didn't know how to pay. He rubbed his forehead, trying to quiet the storm inside him. He loved his family, but lately, he felt like he was failing them. He felt like a man trying to hold up a collapsing roof with his bare hands. Mary stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup she wasn't hungry for. She glanced at David, wanting to ask if he was okay, but she didn't. She was tired too, tired of carrying emotions no one saw, tired of praying for peace she couldn't seem to create, tired of feeling like she was losing her family one silent day at a time. Upstairs, Brittany sat on her bed, hugging her knees. She was 13, old enough to understand tension, but too young to know what to do with it. She felt invisible, like her voice didn't matter, like her feelings were too small to be noticed. She had learned to stay quiet, to stay out of the way, to not make things worse. Little Javen sat on the floor beside her, playing with his toy cars. He didn't understand the heaviness in the house, but he felt it. Children always do. He looked up at his sister and whispered, "Are Mommy and Daddy mad at us?" Brittany shook her head, but she didn't believe her own answer. And then there was Victor, 17, brilliant, angry, drifting. He walked home with his hood up, fists clenched, heart pounding with emotions he didn't know how to express. He felt misunderstood, unheard, trapped between childhood and adulthood with no one to guide him. He loved his family, but he didn't feel connected to them. He felt like a stranger in his own home. Shamar watched him approach the house and whispered, "Wisdom come, understanding enter, purpose rise." Victor opened the door and slammed it behind him. His backpack hit the floor. His voice rose before anyone even asked a question. "I'm done with this family. Nobody listens. Nobody understands me." David stood from the table, jaw tight. "Watch your tone." Victor laughed, a bitter, wounded sound. "There it is. You don't want to understand me. You want to control me." Mary stepped between them, hands trembling. "Please, both of you." But the words dissolved into the tension. Brittany froze at the top of the stairs. Little Javen hid behind the couch, eyes wide. And Shamar whispered, "This is the moment. This is where the house cracks, or where it begins to heal." Mary took a deep breath, the kind that comes from a place deeper than fear, deeper than frustration, deeper than exhaustion. She called out, "Everyone, living room, now." Victor rolled his eyes. David crossed his arms. Brittany crept down the stairs. Little Javen climbed into Mary's lap. The room felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it. Shamar stood behind them, wings folded, waiting. Mary didn't start with anger. She didn't start with blame. She started with truth. "This family is breaking," she said softly. "Not because we don't love each other, but because we've been trying to build a home on love alone." Victor frowned. David looked away. Brittany blinked hard. Mary continued, "Love is the emotion, But wisdom is the structure, understanding is the glue, purpose is the foundation. Shamar whispered, by wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established. Tonight, heaven will teach them how. David finally spoke, voice low. I don't know how to lead this family anymore. I feel like I'm failing all of you. Victor looked up, startled. He had never heard his father speak with such vulnerability. Mary reached for David's hand. You're not failing, you're fighting alone. Victor swallowed hard. I'm angry because I feel unseen. I feel like nobody hears me unless I'm yelling. Brittany whispered, I feel invisible too. Little Jivan tugged at Victor's sleeve. I just want us to be happy again. The room fell silent, not empty, sacred. Shamar touched the air, and the atmosphere shifted. This is the moment heaven has been waiting for. David turned to his son. Victor, I don't want to control you. I want to understand you. Teach me how. Victor's eyes filled. I don't know how to talk without yelling. That's okay, David said. Start where you are. We'll learn together. Mary turned to Brittany. Baby, I see you. I hear you. I'm sorry I missed your quiet pain. Brittany broke, tears falling fast. Little Javen hugged her, whispering, We're a team. Shamar smiled, not because the family is perfect, but because they are willing. They talked for hours, not about rules, not about failures, but about purpose. Why God put them together, why family is a calling, why love must be guided by wisdom, why understanding is a spiritual discipline, why purpose is the anchor that keeps a home from drifting. And as they spoke, the house, the one that had felt tight and tired, began to breathe again. Walls softened, hearts opened, heaven leaned in. Shamar stepped back, wings unfolding. His assignment wasn't over, but tonight the foundation had been repaired. As he rose above the house, he whispered, Love is the flame, wisdom is the house, understanding is the door, purpose is the key, and this family is learning to build again. And the Rivera home, once strained and silent, glowed with a warmth that could only come from heaven's touch. Shamar hovered above the living room, watching the Rivera family breathe in the first fragile peace they had felt in months. But heaven knew something the family did not. Peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of wisdom. And wisdom had only just entered the room. As the family continued talking, a cold wind brushed through the house, though no window was open. Shamar's eyes narrowed. He recognized the shift instantly. Another presence had arrived, not in form, not in body, but in influence. Division. It slithered through the cracks of insecurity, whispering old lies into vulnerable hearts. Into David, you're still failing. They don't trust you. Into Mary, you're not enough, you never were. Into Victor, they're pretending. They'll never understand you. Into Brittany, stay quiet. Your voice doesn't matter. Into little Javen, you can't fix this. Shamar spread his wings, releasing a warm golden light that filled the room. The whispers faded, but not completely. Darkness never leaves willingly. It waits for an open door, and one was about to open. Victor stood abruptly, pacing the room. His emotions were raw, exposed, unfiltered. I don't know how to do this, he said, talking like this. Being honest, it feels weird. David nodded. It feels weird for me, too. Victor stopped pacing. But what if we mess up again? What if this doesn't last? Shamar whispered, Fear always asks about the future. Wisdom teaches you to handle the moment. Mary reached for Victor's hand. We don't need to fix everything tonight. We just need to stay connected. Victor hesitated, then let her hold his hand, but the enemy saw the opening and struck again. A memory flashed in Victor's mind, a moment from 2 years ago when David had yelled at him in frustration. The sting of that moment resurfaced like a fresh wound. Victor pulled his hand away. You say you want to understand me, he snapped, but you're the same man who told me to man up when I was crying in my room. David froze. The words hit him like a blow. Mary inhaled sharply. Brittany looked down. Little Javen's eyes filled with tears. Shamar stepped closer, wings glowing. This is the test. This is where wisdom must speak. David swallowed hard. His pride wanted to defend himself. His fear wanted to shut down. His frustration wanted to argue. But wisdom whispered. And for the first time in a long time, David listened. You're right, he said quietly. I said that, and I was wrong. Victor blinked, stunned. David continued, voice trembling. I didn't know how to handle your pain. I didn't know how to handle my own. I thought being strong meant being silent, but all I did was teach you to hide. Victor's anger cracked, just a little. Mary wiped her eyes. Brittany looked up. Little Javen crawled into David's lap. Shamar smiled. Humility is the doorway to healing. But the enemy wasn't finished. A sudden crash echoed from the kitchen, a glass falling off the counter, shattering across the floor. Everyone jumped. Mary stood quickly. I'll clean it. But as she walked into the kitchen, she felt something tighten in her chest, a familiar heaviness she had carried for years. You're the glue, the lie whispered. If you fall apart, everything falls apart. She knelt to pick up the glass, but her hands shook. Tears blurred her vision. She didn't want the family to see her break. She didn't want to be the reason the peace shattered. But Shamar appeared beside her, unseen, kneeling in the spirit. Mary, he whispered, you are not the glue. God is. You are not the foundation. Wisdom is. You are not the savior. Love himself is. Mary exhaled, a long, trembling breath, and let the tears fall. David walked into the kitchen and saw her crying. For a moment he froze. He had never known how to handle her tears, but tonight wisdom guided him. He knelt beside her, gently taking the broken glass from her hands. You don't have to hold everything together, he said softly. Not alone. Mary leaned into him, sobbing quietly. I'm so tired, David. I know, he whispered. I'm tired too, but we're going to learn how to build this house together. Shamar's wings glowed brighter. This is understanding. This is unity. This is the beginning of restoration. Back in the living room, Victor and Brittany sat in silence. Little Javen climbed onto the couch, hugging his knees. Victor stared at the floor. I didn't mean to make Mom cry. Brittany shook her head. You didn't. She's been holding a lot. Victor sighed. We all have. Shamar appeared behind them, his voice gentle. Children often carry the weight of what parents don't say. Victor looked toward the kitchen, guilt tightening his chest. I should apologize. No, Brittany said softly. You should talk. Apologizing without understanding won't fix anything. Victor looked at her, surprised. When did you get so wise? Brittany shrugged. When nobody listened, I learned to listen to myself. Shamar touched her shoulder in the spirit. Her voice is rising. Heaven has been waiting for this. David and Mary returned to the living room, hands intertwined. Their faces were tired but softer, more open, more human. David sat down. We're not going to pretend everything is fine, but we're going to face it together. Victor nodded slowly. I want that. Brittany whispered, Me too. Little Javen smiled. We're a team. Shamar hovered above them, wings spread wide. The house is shifting. The foundation is strengthening. Wisdom is building. Understanding is establishing. Heaven is pleased. But the story wasn't over. because every family that chooses healing must face the moment where the enemy tries one last time to break what God is restoring, and that moment was coming. Night settled over the Rivera home like a soft blanket, but the peace inside the house was fragile, the kind of peace that trembles if you breathe too hard. The family sat together, closer than they had been in months, yet still unsure of how to move forward. Above them, Shamar hovered with watchful eyes. His wings glowed faintly, casting a warm light over the living room. But he wasn't alone anymore. In the corners of the room, shadows shifted, subtle, quiet, patient, division, fear, misunderstanding. They lingered like smoke, waiting for an opening. Shamar narrowed his eyes. "Not tonight," he whispered. "Not this family. Not this house." But the enemy is persistent, and it knows exactly where to strike. Victor stood up suddenly, pacing again. His emotions were swirling: guilt, anger, confusion, hope. He didn't know how to hold all of it at once. "I don't know what you all expect from me," he said, voice tight. "I'm trying, okay? But I feel like I'm drowning." David leaned forward. "We don't expect perfection. We expect honesty." Victor shook his head. "Honesty gets me in trouble. Every time I speak, it turns into a fight." Mary reached out gently. "Then let's learn a new way to speak. Together." But the enemy whispered into Victor's ear, "They're only saying that because they feel guilty. They don't really care." Victor's jaw clenched. "You're all acting like this is easy, like we can just talk and everything magically gets better." Brittany looked at him with wide eyes. "It's not magic, it's work." Victor snapped, "You don't know anything about work." The words hit Brittany like a slap. She shrank back, eyes filling with tears. Shamar's wings flared. "Careful, Victor. Words build or destroy. Choose wisely." Victor realized what he'd said, but pride rose up, that old familiar shield. David stood slowly. "Son, apologize." Victor crossed his arms. "Why? She doesn't understand what I'm going through." Mary stepped in. "Victor, she's 13. She's trying. She's hurting too." But the enemy whispered again, "You're alone. No one gets you. No one ever will." Victor's voice cracked. "I don't belong in this family." The room froze. Brittany gasped. Little Javen covered his ears. Mary's hand flew to her mouth. David's heart dropped into his stomach. Shemar stepped forward, wings glowing brighter. "This is the lie. This is the root. This is the wound heaven came to heal." David took a slow breath, the kind that comes from a man choosing wisdom over pride. "Victor," he said softly, "you belong here because God put you here, not because you feel like it, not because you always agree with us, not because you're perfect. You belong because you're ours." Victor's eyes filled, but he looked away. Mary moved closer. "You don't have to earn your place in this family. You already have it." Brittany wiped her tears. "And you don't get to leave us just because you're hurting." Little Javen climbed off the couch and walked to Victor, placing his small hand on his brother's arm. "You're my big brother. You can't not belong." Victor's breath hitched. Shamar whispered, "Love is speaking, wisdom is guiding, understanding is rising." But the enemy made one last attempt. A memory flashed in Victor's mind, the night he overheard his parents arguing about him, the night he heard his father say, "I don't know what to do with that boy." Victor's voice broke. "Dad, you said you didn't know what to do with me." David closed his eyes. "I did say that, and I regret it every day." Victor's voice trembled. "So what am I supposed to think?" David stepped closer. "You're supposed to think this: I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm trying, and I will never stop trying to understand you." Victor's shoulders shook. Mary placed her hand on his back. We're not perfect parents, but we're present parents, Brittany whispered, and we're not perfect siblings, but we're here. Little Javen hugged Victor's waist. And we love you. Victor finally broke, not with anger, not with yelling, but with a deep, trembling sob, the kind that comes from a heart that has been carrying too much for too long. David pulled him into his arms. Mary wrapped her arms around them both. Brittany joined. Little Jiven squeezed in. And for the first time in years, the Rivera family held each other, truly held each other. Shamar's wings spread wide, filling the room with a warm, golden light. This, he whispered, is healing. This is unity. This is the power of a family that chooses wisdom. But the story wasn't finished because every breakthrough must be tested. Every healing must be strengthened. Every family must learn how to walk in what they've received. And the next test was already on its way. The Rivera home settled into a quiet stillness after the emotional breakthrough, the kind of stillness that comes after a storm, not empty, but sacred. The family sat together, breathing the same air, sharing the same moment, feeling the same fragile hope. But Shamar knew something they didn't. Breakthrough is not the end. Breakthrough is the beginning of a battle. He hovered above them, wings half spread, eyes scanning the spiritual atmosphere. The shadows had retreated, but they had not disappeared. They lingered outside the home, waiting for the moment when emotions cooled and old patterns tried to return. And that moment came sooner than anyone expected. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A message from a friend he used to hang out with. A friend who always pulled him into trouble. A friend who fed his anger, not his healing. Come through. We're out tonight. Don't be lame. Victor's chest tightened. Part of him wanted to stay with his family. Another part, the part that feared vulnerability, wanted to run. Shamar stepped closer, whispering, Choose wisely, Victor. The enemy always offers escape when God offers healing. Victor stood abruptly. I need some air. David looked up. Son, I'm fine, Victor said quickly. I just need to think. Mary's heart clenched. Don't go far. Victor nodded, but his eyes were already drifting toward the door. As he stepped outside, the night air hit him like a wave. Cool, quiet, tempting. He walked down the street, hands in his pockets, mind racing. The message buzzed again. We're waiting. Don't chicken out. Victor stopped walking. He stared at the screen, his heart pounded. Inside the house, Shamar felt the shift. Not now, he whispered. Not after all this. He moved swiftly, appearing beside Victor in the spirit. You are not who you used to be. You are not alone. You are not abandoned. You are not misunderstood. You are becoming. But the enemy whispered louder. They'll never understand you. You'll always be the problem. Come back to what you know. Victor closed his eyes, torn between two worlds. Back in the house, Brittany felt something, a tug in her spirit. She looked at Mary. Mom, Victor's not okay. Mary stood instantly. David! I know, David said, already grabbing his jacket. But Brittany shook her head. No, let me talk to him. David hesitated. Brittany, he's upset. I know, she said softly, but he listens to me in ways he doesn't listen to you. Shamar smiled. Her voice rises. Heaven has been waiting for this. David nodded slowly. Go, but stay where we can see you. Brittany stepped outside, her heart pounding. She saw Victor standing under the streetlight, staring at his phone. She walked toward him quietly. Victor? He didn't turn around. Go back inside, Britt. No. He exhaled sharply. I don't want to talk. I know, she said gently, but you need to hear something. Victor finally turned, eyes tired. What? Brittany swallowed hard. You're not the only one who feels alone? Victor blinked. Brittany continued, voice trembling. I feel invisible all the time. I feel like nobody hears me. I feel like I'm just here, watching everyone else fall apart. Victor's expression softened. But tonight, Brittany said, I realize something. We're all hurting. We're all scared. We're all trying. And we need you. I need you. Victor looked away, fighting tears. Brittany stepped closer. Don't leave us tonight. Not when we're finally starting to heal. Shamar placed a hand on Victor's shoulder in the spirit. Listen, son. This is understanding. This is unity. This is love guided by wisdom. Victor looked at his phone one last time, then turned it off. He slipped it into his pocket and whispered, Okay, I'm staying. Brittany smiled through tears. Good, because we're a team. They walked back toward the house together. Inside, Mary and David watched from the window, relief washing over them. Little Javen ran to the door, cheering, Victor's back! Victor stepped inside, and Mary wrapped her arms around him. David placed a hand on his son's back. Brittany stood beside them, smiling softly. Little Javen hugged everyone at once. Shamar hovered above them, wings glowing brighter than ever. This, he whispered, is what heaven builds. Not perfect families, not flawless people, but willing hearts, humble spirits, homes built on wisdom, established by understanding, strengthened by purpose. The shadows outside the house faded completely. The Rivera home, once strained and silent, now pulsed with warmth, unity, and divine presence. Shamar rose above the roof, watching the family laugh, cry, and hold each other. Love is the flame, he whispered. Wisdom is the house. Understanding is the door. Purpose is the key. And this family is learning to build again. And with that, the angel spread his wings and disappeared into the night, knowing he would return, because families are not built in a moment. They are built one choice at a time.